All right, so we are live. It is 7 o'clock. I am here with Mariia Hlyten, and I am going to, and we're here to shame Congress as to their incredible irresponsibility in failing to pass the National Security Supplemental in the Senate last week, or even move it to a vote. And we're going to do that by projecting some taunts and slogans and images on the walls of the Russian embassy that will be specially chosen this week to do as to a certain topicality with respect to Congress. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Representative Adam Kinzinger, former representative, who is going to talk about the Republican politics of Ukraine support, and we're going to try to draw some attention for American audiences, principally, to what needs to happen in order for this Ukraine support to happen. For those who've never joined one of these before, in a few minutes, the Russians will project a big Z onto their own embassy, just so that you're not confused. When they start projecting their Z spotlight, that is not me, that is them. I don't project Z's or V's. So, Marichka, get us started here and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what happened to you at the beginning of the full-scale invasion.
So I have one little remark. It seems like Adam Kinzinger is right now in our attendee list, and it would be nice if Matteo could add him as a co-host so he could join us, right?
Good call. Matteo, if you could bring Representative Kinzinger on, that would be fabulous. And thanks for noticing that, Marichka. So tell us about yourself. Who are you and how did you come to be at a special military operation? Hey, man, good to see you.
Good to see you guys. We made it.
So we are here. Adam, meet Marichka. Marichka, meet Representative Kinzinger, a former representative in exile, Kinzinger. And we will be with you in just a second, sir.
Sounds good.
All right, can I start?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. So my name is Mariia. I'm 22 and I'm from Ukraine. I've been in the US already for a year and a half, and I'm trying to advocate for Ukraine and for supplemental bill for a while already, because I feel like it's really important not only for Ukraine but for US as well and for the whole world. And basically I had a really hard circumstances back home because I've been at home when the war started, and I spent some time when the bombing just started in Kiev, and then I moved to the suburbs and basically were occupied with my family for approximately a month, having no way to get some food or medications or anything. So I had some terrifying experience at home, and I was quite lucky to win a huge scholarship for studying here in the US. And I always felt that this is the good country to go because we usually have a lot of support from the US. But right now I'm worried and a little bit concerned because we don't have much time till the Congress go on official holiday. And I feel like we need to push Congress a little more right now and put a lot of efforts to actually pass the supplemental bill and help Ukraine resist Russians because they are attacking us every day, constantly. And unfortunately, this is the question that cannot wait. And I mean, personally, I can wait, but Russians never stop. They're killing people every day. And my family is still in Ukraine. They're still under huge danger every day. And, you know, it's really hard for me to live normal life in here, even though everything seems quite happy and quite safe. I am concerned every day about my relatives, my friends, and my country at all, because it seems like right now the world left us a little, and this is what I personally feel. So I'm here to show that I really care about what US saying about Ukraine. I really care about the aid and help US providing for us. So yeah, it would be really interesting to hear what you think on this matter, what we can do, how can we push more right now, so that we will make sure that till New Year we will actually get this aid.
So, Adam, talk to us about how we came to a place where, where 2 years ago, 100%, almost 100% of members of Congress would have, it was a completely nonpartisan issue. The only criticism, other than from Marjorie Taylor Greene, you heard of the administration from Republicans, including people like you, was that they weren't doing enough. They weren't getting weapon systems to the Ukrainians fast enough. And today, 100% of Republicans in the Senate voted against cloture, not today, but this week. How did we get to that point? How much of this is really opposition to Ukraine aid, and how much of it is sort of domestic populism that's about something else?
Hey, well, it's good to be with everybody. Mariia, nice to meet you. And Ben, good to see you. And thanks for pissing off the Russians yet again. I'm sure they enjoy it. So you make our life fun to watch. So, but let me just say, look, it's even worse than that. I mean, I think back to 2014, and I mean, our big talking point in Congress was that, you know, Barack Obama wasn't doing enough to help Ukraine, both prior to the fake annexation of Crimea. We said he wasn't doing enough after that, and he wasn't. I think he absolutely wasn't. But now those same people that were attacking him are now the ones that are playing this game. Here's what it comes down to. I mean, look, there are some actually opposed to helping Ukraine people. I don't think it's a majority of Republicans. So I kind of break them down into three groups. There's pro-Ukraine Republicans. There's a group of anti-Ukraine Republicans, more of the isolationists. And then there are those that are just scared to death to take a stand because they want to get reelected. I dealt with all of them on the January 6th stuff. I mean, these were the people that never spoke out. So I think on the Senate thing, I was very angry about not about the Republicans opposing the chance to move forward. I will say I'm not hopeless, though, because look, we do have a crisis on the southern border. We don't need to get into that, but I think it was an opportunity, and I think it still will be an opportunity for President Biden to deal with that issue, but kind of cloak it in, you know, look, Republicans are making me do this, but it would actually go after a real issue, which I think is a vulnerability for the president next year, and then make sure we get Israel and Ukraine together. I still think the majority of Republicans in the Senate would vote for this once it comes forward. The administration has seemed to indicate they're willing to negotiate more. But here's the point. Like, this is politics. It sucks how it's happening. We need to just pass Ukraine and get it done with. If this is going to continue to drag on because of a concern about the border or Israel or whatever it is, fine. I understand that. We can have legitimate debates. But the one thing we don't have the luxury of debating much longer is, are we going to support Ukraine? So I would say this, like, first off, here's another interesting thing I like to think about. You know, when we're all learning history in American schools, you learn all about these heroes of World War II, and you learn about Winston Churchill and how visionary he was and how he was so right in seeing the German threat. But something we forget is really up until 1939, Winston Churchill was a pariah. he was seen as a warmonger, somebody that just wants to fight again, you know, and everybody's tired. And then obviously, with looking back with the benefit of history, we see how smart he was, how he saw the threat. That's the moment we're in here, where there are people that like to worship these so-called heroes, but then when it comes down to actually doing the tough work of trying to be somebody like that yourself, they don't have the courage to do it. That's the reason there was only like Winston Churchill, because it's not a popular thing. So a couple of pieces of advice. First off, Mariia, you, your family, your country, don't lose hope, because I am still, if I was in Vegas making bets, I would bet that this gets done by the end of the year. Now, that doesn't mean everybody needs to relax, because I think there also is a pretty solid chance it doesn't. I know I sound like a politician here and hedging, but I have no better way to predict it. For everybody that's watching this, look, Twitter, here's the dirty little secret of like Twitter and threads and everything. Politicians read their own mentions, although it's harder now on Twitter to do it, because you just have to pay $8 and now you're verified. So tweeting is important. Yes, sending emails to your congressman or senator is important. These are all things we have to do to counter the pressure. Am I still here? Yeah, I guess so.
Yep.
Okay, cool. You're showing, I see your YouTube feed right now, just so you know. But in case you go on a little surfing expedition. But anyway, the bottom line is I think there is a great opportunity to get this thing done, but you have got to continue to put pressure out. So do not underestimate what your tweets are, what your meetings are, and that kind of stuff, because it does pressure people. I'll say this too, and I'm happy, Ben, if you or Mariia want to ask me any questions, make sure I hit everything. But look, this is a moment for our generation. And whether you're at the end of the X's like me, you're a millennial, you're a Z, you're a boomer, whatever it is, this is the fight of our generation. And Ukraine is, yes, they're defending their homeland, and that's the most important thing. That's what their interest is. But they are actually defending all of Western civilization at this moment. And if we, yet again, cut and run from a fight we're not even fighting, because it's too expensive, even though it's just a fraction of our military budget, I don't see how any ally of the United States ever trusts us again. I'm still bitter about Afghanistan. I won't go into that now, but this is an opportunity to continue to be the leader of the free world, which frankly, we can do uniquely. And so that's why now it is so important to frankly project things on the Russian embassy. It's important to hear from folks like Mariia. It's important to talk to your congressman or senator and let them know that if they continue to oppose this, their name will be an embarrassment in history. So look, with that, I'm happy to take any thoughts or questions you guys have. I don't feel like what else can we do or whatever that is, but I'm happy to answer that. Let me actually, before that, let me just say that the Republicans, again, generally are for supporting Ukraine. But what they're for more than supporting Ukraine is their own reelection. And they have been convinced by the loudest minority in the GOP, the crazies, they've been convinced that the base is against this war. That is actually not true. And we need to remind them of that.
Yeah. So how do you do that? So, a lot of people will see snippets of this. There are people watching it live, and all of the people watching it live, by the way, should share it. Share the YouTube stream, which is now no longer seeing my shared screen. It is now seeing the live shot of the embassy. I tell everybody these things are chaotic. I've got 3 computers open right now, and one of them's controlling a laser. I'm amazed the Russians haven't put up their own spotlights yet.
They're probably drunk.
Yeah, it is Saturday night. So what is what are how do you, if you're, not in Washington and you're what are the three things to do to remind members of Congress that, as Liz Cheney says, this vote we'll eventually forget about this vote. We won't forget about your shame.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
and you need to step up here.
I think, look, the best thing I can give if you're just kind of sitting at home trying to figure out how you can do it, first off, take the weight of the world off your shoulders, because one of the things I've noticed is, when things don't go the way that we want, it is very easy for people to become disengaged, right? Look, I mean, I went through this with all the January 6th stuff and everything else where there had been points, and I thankfully never made the decision, but there are points where you're like, I'm done. I'm not breaking through. I don't want to do this. Well, the truth is, in 5 years, we're going to look back and we'll either be proud of this moment or ashamed of this moment. All we can do, this includes me, this includes you, this includes Mariia, all we can do is what we have the ability to do. Now, I know that sounds weird, but if you have a Twitter feed, tweet out Ukraine stuff, right? You guys know this and you're probably doing it. But again, mention in those tweets, tag your congressman, your senator, whoever, because they do. You'd be surprised at how many, again, actually look at their own Twitter feed. You'd also be surprised that if they're not looking, their staff members are. And we want to create this groundswell. NAFO, which I'm a member of, is such a cool organization for being able.
I miss it so much.
Oh yeah,
like I used to swapping images with NAFO fellas, including you, was like a super empowering thing to do. It's the only I miss a lot of things about old Twitter, but nothing more than that.
That's it. Yeah. Well, I guess they're on Truth Social now and going to troll people. So I'm going to create a fake account at some point and maybe help do that. But so I think it's Threads, it's Post, whatever you're on, Facebook, get those things out there. Because again, the more that people are doing this, it feels like a groundswell. Look, I'll tell you this little secret. When I was in Congress, I would look at my mentions, and if it was like 50-1, like Kinzinger's a rhino piece of crap, right? I know that doesn't represent the country, but it does affect you. It can bother you. And so those kinds of things make a difference. Call and write your senator and congressman. That makes a difference, because I can tell you.
Okay, so wait, I'm just going to hang on just a second. I just want to point out to people who are watching that there are now people walking into the embassy grounds, and there's no moment that I love more in special military operations than when Russian diplomats are standing at their own gates and have to see. They're walking in now at the security gate, and we have a big Ukrainian flag above it. And I want to tell them this as well. This is a Russian, and actually this is in Ukrainian, but it's an unspeakable obscenity directed at their president. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, please do, because that's more fun than what I'm saying. So, but I'll wrap that point up with, so those kinds of things matter. If you got somebody that agrees with you, get them to put those tweets and things out and everything. Pray. If you're a prayer, pray. Trust me. As a believer myself, I think that matters. And just continue to rattle the chains here. I think that's the best thing we can do. And just remind people, look, this momentary political pressure you're under is nothing compared to the shame you're going to live with the rest of your life if you fall apart on this. And obviously, if you can help charities in Ukraine, make sure they're cleared and good, because there are some bad ones out there that steal money. But there's a lot of really good charities that help people, and continue to reach out. That's the best advice I can give. Don't lose hope, because when you lose hope, you don't engage anymore. And when you don't engage, the baddies win. Tim Miller knows all about the baddies. And so don't let them win.
Yeah, so we are joined by the great Tim Miller, and the Z Spotlight has now made its appearance.
Yeah.
So I have such mixed feelings about the Z Spotlight, because on the one hand, it is really like, I don't know, like at a protest at a a German embassy in 1940 or 42. They whip out a swastika spotlight. But on the other hand, I kind of, all over the world, Russian embassies have to invest in spotlights now. And every dollar they spend on making themselves look ridiculous like this is a dollar they don't have to spend on, on propaganda, on cultural events that people get fooled by, on missiles, and it shows that we're getting to them. That
If
we
you
get
weren't
them.
if you weren't pissing them off, they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. And so, sometimes they show spotlights, sometimes they come across the street and try to block the projections. But I do have a certain pride of the reactions that we generate. So we are joined by the great Tim Miller. Thank you for taking a few minutes this evening. And I want to, first of all, Tim, introduce you to Marichka, who was telling us earlier that she was in an occupied region of the Kiev suburbs in the first few weeks of the war, and has been in the United States, and is you know uh, found a certain haven here, has really believed in American support for Ukraine, and is feeling kind of down now, and kind of abandoned. And I'm curious. Adam was saying he thinks it's going to get done by the end of the year, but he's not sure. Um, this is a kind of expression of a lot of the things that you've been talking about for a lot of years now. The elevation of the basest partisan instincts over things that really matter, and this is life and death stuff uh, in the most real sense. So tell us how you're feeling, what your reactions to the whole thing are, and how I should think about all Senate Republicans voting against cloture on this.
Yeah. Well, hey, Marichka, welcome to America. I'm sorry that these, nationalist assholes are, causing you angst. I'm sorry that you had to come here at all, frankly. But you're looking good. It's good to see you. These guys, Kinzinger, what the fuck are we going to do with these guys? And it's really something. It's really frustrating. It shows the brain worms, this idea that even people, even the handful of them that understand the importance of this, like playing these political games and acting like it's the Democrats who are playing political games, and kind of pretending like they need to get some deal to support Ukraine. Like there shouldn't be any negotiating necessary here, right? Like this should just be a cut and dry thing, supporting our ally in the face of Putin's aggression. But unfortunately, we are where we are. I agree with Ad. I have simultaneous, depending on the hour, rage and optimism about it. I agree with Adam. I kind of think it's going to happen. Part of the reason I think it's going to happen is because Joe Biden, who's maybe flawed in some areas in foreign policy, does really care about this. And I was in D.C. this week, and without betraying confidences, I was having conversations with people in the White House, and I think that they're going to deal on it. I mean, I really think that they are. I don't know that for sure. Don't quote me. I'm not speaking for the White House, but my sense is that they are going to do what is needed to get the Republicans on board with regards to the border. Now, the question is whether the Republicans are kind of playing Calvin ball here, and like they're, they'll keep moving the goalposts, and if Biden doesn't, agree to kids in cages, and that's not enough, and they won't do it, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's hard to know whether the border goalposts will continue to be moved, but I do think that Biden is going to play ball on this. Because of how important it is, also because of how important Israel is, of course, but because of how important Ukraine is, since that's really the more of the sticking point. And then I think that there's pessimism after that, right? Then we got to kind of go do all this again. But I know, Ben, you know better than I do about some thought was put into how much the ask is this time, with that in mind.
Yeah, it's big for a reason.
Yeah, it's big for a reason.
And it's so that you don't have to do it again before the election.
So I'm hopeful that it's going to happen. I am enraged. I'm annoyed. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that even the remaining good ones, like Mitt, are kind of out there acting like this is responsible negotiating. That upsets me. But I think it's doable, and I think that let's just assume, let's just be positive here. It's a Saturday night. Let's just assume, for the sake of conversation, that Biden agrees to some kind of deal on the border. I think then the key moment of action and pressure, it happens then, making sure that that the good Republicans, quote unquote, that the Republicans who actually care about this, like, we're never going to get JD Vance on board, but the Republicans that actually care about this don't, start screwing around and saying, oh, it's not enough. Like, making a big stink about the amount that Biden is sacrificing here, and the deal that is being made. I feel like they're getting their pound of flesh.
I gotta say, I'm actually worried about the left on this, because when you say Biden will deal, and I agree he will deal and he should deal, but what that means is probably some genuinely terrible border policy. Although I agree with Adam that there's a crisis that we need to deal with, I suspect the demands are not what you and I, Adam, would sit down and hash out as a reasonable next step of border security, reform of a variety of migration policies, and immigration reform. I suspect it will look a little bit more draconian than that, and that will create, I'm really afraid of this, an abandonment on the left that will then, particularly because it's paired with Gaza Israel aid. And so you have, I do worry that what Biden ends up doing here is, appeasing the crazies on the right, in order to get the immediate deal. And by doing so, he actually develops a greater immigration policy problem on the left. Am I being pessimistic there?
I think, well, I'm interested in Adam's thoughts on, because he knows these guys a little more personally, but I'll tell you this. I think you're being pessimistic when it comes to the actual votes, because I really think the number of Democrats you're losing on this is maybe 24 in the House at most. I think a handful of senators. So assuming, again, the key constituency here is, do the remaining quasi-normal Republicans go along, like, feel like they're going to cut, so I mean, can you still cut a deal where, in the House you're getting, whatever it is, 180 Democrats and 100 Republicans? Yeah, I think so. I think that seems doable, and similar kind of ratio in the Senate. I think Biden is going to create a political problem for himself on the left with young voters and stuff like that, and that may have downstream consequences come middle of next year, thinking about the reelect, and obviously electing Trump's like the worst thing that could happen to Ukraine. So I think it's fair to be concerned that he creates a political problem for himself with, voter energy, progressive turnout, young voters. But I don't think that he's going to create enough of a problem to, like, scuttle the bill. That'd be my assessment.
Yeah, I would agree. I think too, yeah, he may end up with the problem with young voters in the short term, which is nuts to me, by the way. But whatever, I'll save that for a different live stream. But the reality is, everybody has very short attention spans, and the war in Gaza is going to be over by the election. And I think that'll be an afterthought. What won't be over, unfortunately, maybe if we're blessed, but what probably won't be over is the war in Ukraine. And so I actually agree with Tim. Ben, I think you're right to have the concern. But I haven't actually seen what the Republican demands are on the border. I don't think it's all that draconian. And quite honestly, I agree with a lot of what they're trying to push. I just don't agree with pairing it with Ukraine. And I think there's a lot of Democrats that, wary of their left, won't say this, but know that they have to deal with this issue too, because that's a political hit for them. So I agree with Tim. You have 2 Z's up now. Did they put a second Z up?
Yep, they put a second Z,
Nice.
and they've got 2 big floodlights that are just covering the surface in white light to try to lessen the power of the laser. So if you look at the flag now, let me shrink it down a little bit, it's a much fainter image, and that's not because I have less power, it's because they have a lot of white light on the surface. But
they're like 4th graders.
Yeah, they're like 4th graders. So Marichka, does this make you feel better in terms of the likelihood of it passage, or do you feel like all of a sudden Ukraine is embroiled in domestic American politics in a way that I would think would be very uncomfortable?
So first of all, I want to mention that this is insane how Russians are proud of killing Ukrainians, putting that letter Z. That's like pisses me off a lot, and that's so crazy. I don't know. The whole world kept watching how they're killing people every day, and they are super proud of that. They feel like it's the right thing to do, and yeah, that's the thing. I cannot, I do not understand this, and I will never get this. And it's my daily thoughts in my head. So it's kind of hard to live with that for 2 years already. But I have 2 points or questions or whatever, and you kind of, can answer whatever you can answer on this sense. But so first of all, I don't really understand, and I'm still worried and concerned why they still postponing this, blocking this bill and everything. If I personally feel like this is the question of national security of the United States, and basically it's not the war of Russia and Ukraine only. It's kind of, it's a super cheap war for US, let's say, because no Americans are dying in this war, right? And we all know that Russia is a huge opponent of the United States. And if you're saying that anyways they will pass this bill, why they're waiting right now, what they're waiting for? Because at some point it will be literally too late. I'm a volunteer already for a lot of years, and I'm trying to raise money for cars and different drones, military stuff, every day. And I know that we need tons of this stuff. We don't have enough. We're a super small country comparing to Russia, and even though we could joke a lot about how stupid they are, but actually military wise they're super strong. And I know in person, I know some military people who kept telling me how bad everything is and how hard it is. And I'm just concerned that it could be too late at some point. So why they are waiting? What can we do right now to stop this? How can we say more? How can we say louder that we do need this support, because it's beneficial for you guys in the US, and it's actually a right thing to do, because Russia is attacking innocent people. That's the first thing. And my second question would be, as Adam, you mentioned that we need to tag people more, kind of tag representatives or senators. So what would be the right arguments to mention. Like, what can we say to these people? Why should they support Ukraine? Why should they do this right now? Can we mention like how beneficial it's like for some other states? You know, I know there were recent statistics about how economically it's good for some regions when they producing more weapons and everything for Ukraine, creating kind of a lot of job opportunities and everything, bringing growth to the regions. Or like, what else can we mention? What can we do? Because I literally, I don't understand this political games, and you know, my main concern is people's lives.
Yeah, look, that's a really good point. I think the best thing when you talk about it's not as much jobs as basically I read a good article about how the aid to Ukraine has basically saved and rejuvenated the US defense industry. It's allowed us to understand what we need to produce, what we don't need to produce. It's done the same for the rest of the West. So from a national defense perspective, if you're looking at an eventual conflict with China, or you're looking at a possible conflict with Iran, what we have done, even though we've depleted our stocks slightly, let's be very clear, not that much, we've actually rejuvenated the base to make more weapons than we ever could have done in any other case. It would have taken us, you know, forever. The other point real quick, we have, and this may be a point to make, you know, we gave however many dozens of Abrams tanks to Ukraine. The US we have way too many tanks. When I was in Congress, I would be lobbied by the tank manufacturers and then by the Army that says we're buying about 1,000 tanks too many every year because of the industrial complex, because of the jobs. And we put so many Abrams tanks in storage just to rot away. We need to up that. We need to obviously make sure we're supporting the F-16s. So what can you say better? I think the point you made about the defense industry is important. I think also talking about, you know, the fact that we do have a lot of excess weaponry that we can give. I mean, look at the cluster munitions. It was brilliant to send the cluster munitions. They should have gone a year earlier, but these have been extremely devastating to the Russians. And we were getting ready to destroy these weapons. These were sitting in basically destruction. So we actually saved money. The last thing I'll say on that really quick is people don't understand that U.S. foreign aid, we don't write a check and give it to Ukraine. It's spent in the United States. I think in this case, close to 80% of the money has been spent on in the United States. People don't understand that's what foreign aid is. It's a good thing to remind people. And then just quickly, why is this happening? It's just politics. That's the best I can give you. You know, people look and say everybody has their priorities, and so they hold out till they get their priority by using the other side's priority, even though Ukraine is, and it should be an American priority. The fact that somebody like Mitt Romney voted against proceeding, while I disagree with his vote, it tells me that he understands that this will get done, because I think otherwise he wouldn't have voted that way. So I don't agree with how they're doing it, but it's politics right now.
Yeah, so I want to come to Tim in just a sec, but I want to ask you, this point about the way U.S. military aid works is so important. People really do think we're writing checks. Just walk us through, what does it mean when you give $100 billion to Ukraine in aid? When Congress does that appropriation, just walk us through how the money gets spent. And while you do that, I'm going to fuck with the Russians for a minute by moving the laser. Okay.
Just quickly on how that's spent. So if you guys you'll hear this sometimes where they talk about, you know, 10 billion or 500 million in Presidential Drawdown Authority, PDA, not Public Displays of Affection. Sorry, Tim, but Presidential Drawdown Authority. And what that means is if there are weapons that we are getting ready to get rid of anyway. So in our natural cycle, the ATACMS, for instance, the older ones that we've given to Ukraine, those were fragged to be deployed, to be destroyed. We were going to decommission those. So when we give those to Ukraine, we have to, because of accounting, put a value onto that. We have to put a price onto that. That's included when we talk about $100 billion of aid, even though that was going to be destroyed anyway and replaced. So a significant amount of the money is not really spent at all, because we're simply having to put a value on stuff we were getting ready to get rid of in the first place. Secondarily, with the exception of Israel, who has a waiver, a 75% waiver, all foreign aid has to be spent on U.S. products or U.S. weapons systems. And so that's what's going on with Ukraine as well. There's a little bit we're giving to help like pay the military and stuff like that, which paying the military is essential, because I'm going to tell you, if they didn't pay the U.S. military, guys wouldn't show up and fight. I mean, that's just a reality. You got to support your family. And so that's generally how aid works. The problem is, I think this administration, and frankly, every administration, has done a piss poor job of explaining that to people, that we're not just giving $100 billion to Ukraine. That's not at all what's happening. And lastly, and then I'll turn it over to Timmy. Lastly, like, we have extremely strict accounting for how this aid is being used and spent. We are keeping track of every shell, where it goes, how it's used. So if anybody was stealing this money or this aid or these weapons, we would know about it. It is not happening. And every weapon, every system we send to Ukraine is actually put into action to kill Russians, which is a pretty good investment. Now I'm going to go after this. So thank you, guys.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it.
Adam, you're a great American. Thank you so much for joining us on short notice. I literally texted Adam after I had breakfast with Marichka this morning and said, hey, you free in the 7 o'clock hour? And he said he'd join for 20 minutes. 45 minutes later, he's still here. This is what Congress people should be doing in support of Ukraine, dropping everything when asked. And it is my deep regret that it is ex-members of Congress who you can get to do these things, no questions asked. So notice that I moved the flag, and the Z is now moving to try to cover it. Adam,
Terrible.
Thanks so much. Tim, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Adam, you're awesome. And he's been so good on all of that, the technical and the military side of things. I just want to talk about the politics and what maybe you could do to help on the advocacy side. Because this is Trump. I mean, let's just be honest. This is Trump, and this is the nationalist pivot in the party, and that has caused all of this. And there's been fundamental opposition to aid from Republican voters in the past, but this is the first time, that this is all, really become a major actionable problem. And it's because of Trump. And so that's maddening, but that's just the reality. And so to me, I think everything that Adam said is right. And that's all good advice. But you, Marichka, and the people that you talk to and your friends and other people that have come in from Ukraine or have relationships there, to me, I think the best thing that can be done between now and when this passes, hopefully, is figure out the handful of Republicans that are still receptive to the moral and ideological argument about this, and to target them with that message. And with that message as an emotional plea, right? I mean, we're talking about Mitt Romney, Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, like whatever you think about these people, right? Like those are the people that need, Mitch McConnell, obviously. Those are the people that are going to need to be ensured that their spine is sturdy on this. And I do think that kind of advocacy matters and makes a difference. I do think they're still going to play politics, but if Biden comes to the table, if they're feeling the pressure, not just from the nationalists, isolationists, but also from people that are really, frankly, more aligned with what their instincts are, I think that will help. And that is really, those are the people I'd focus my energy on kind of social media and other kind of outreach. So I go ahead, but if you have one other thing really quick, I do have a couple 6-year-olds yelling at me out there. So yeah,
so we're going to let you go, but I have one question that I'm going to ask you on Marichka's behalf.
Okay.
Which is, we were talking this morning about, how few people turn up when the Ukrainian community does an event, does a rally. There's a few non-Ukrainians there, but it is largely Ukrainians talking to Americans by talking to Ukrainians. And I am curious, we got some more light action going on. I'm curious how you think the Mariishkas of the world can talk to like what's the forums in which I tried to create one tonight where we're talking to Americans about Ukraine. They're hearing from Ukrainians, but what's the mechanism by which the Ukrainian community can talk to people in Kentucky who can talk to Mitch McConnell? How does that work?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I think that the Israel situation has created some problems in this regard, and just the nature of time and people losing energy. That's just human nature. For me, it is how can you get, like the realities of what is happening in Ukraine in front of people, right? And like thinking about it in personal stories and compelling stories and content that's coming from over there. And I mean, it's odd to say that like a Chinese spy app is the best way to do this, but really this should be happening on TikTok, right? Like that is, trying to figure out how to kind of get into that algorithm and send original content that can kind of get outside of existing bubbles. I don't know what the financial thing is. There are paid ways to do this. I do think there is a reservoir of goodwill for Ukraine. It's the motivation is the question, right? So, like, as far as I'm concerned, right? It's not that people don't. It's not that there's no Americans who care about Ukraine. People in America do care about Ukraine, but it's been going on for a while now, and they care about a lot of things. And it's Christmas, and so how can you get in front of those people? Maybe some of that is paid with digital targeting, and there are a lot of people that can help with that. But I think it's also, it's like anything else. It's raw, it's emotional. How do we kind of tell stories from Ukraine back here? I think that was something that Zelensky was doing very well for a while, and obviously we're kind of at a different phase in the war, and so I don't exactly know what a day-to-day looks like for Zelensky, but I assume he has other stuff on his plate. And so, I think that has also had an impact, right? That, like his Christmas message, or whatever it was last year, was one way to get to people. So I like, that's the challenge. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I don't think it's because there is not goodwill here. It's going to take effort.
Tim Miller, you're a great American.
Thank you.
Take care, brother.
I appreciate you.
And take care of those 6-year-olds.
All right, Slava. Okay, we'll see y'all.
All right. So we are having a little bit of trouble now with the degree of light that the Russians are putting up, and so I've shrunk the flag down as pretty small, and I've moved outside my car to keep it mobile, so we can try to be mobile. Every time I come out, there are more Russian lights, and while Marichka hates the Z's for obvious reasons, the one I hate the most is just that big giant flood, and it's not for ideological reasons or for what it says. It's just because it makes projection really hard. So we're gonna start wrapping things up. I have to somewhere to be after 8, so we're gonna end by 8. But Marichka, do you have thoughts as we in the 10 minutes we have remaining?
Yeah, so I've got quite useful insights, and thanks for inviting your friends to come to us and talk about that. This is really important, and I feel like that would be, I mean, a lot of work needs to be done through the next week, until the 14th of December. So, but I feel like I've got a little more hope than I had before. And I will definitely talk to my friends. I will talk to different organizations, and we will try to reach out to these representatives and American audience as well. In any ways we can do this in a week, but I mean, it's worth trying. And I will still believe that they will pass the bill and everything will be great. Because when you kind of have this positive attitude, so you're now not noticing how you put more efforts into the things. So yeah, I feel like we all have a lot of things to think of and a lot of things to be done next week. So yeah, quite fruitful conversation. I'm so happy. I was so happy to be here, and actually so happy to see Ukrainian flag on Russian embassy, because yeah, that's a really important thing to do. Kind of remind that we are here, we see everything, and shame on them. We will never forget what they're doing with our country, with our people. And the whole world will never forget this.
So let's close this out with the image that Marichka refers to, a Ukrainian flag. They can put Z's on either side of it, but they can't blot it out. And they've been trying now for many years, 2 years in the very literal sense of trying to erase Ukrainian national identity using violence, and in a metaphorical sense by putting Z spotlights on top of the flag when I project it. And so what I'm going to do to close this out is I'm going to put it on the flag of the embassy, which I try to do, but this is the hardest one to do this with in some of the embassies in Europe where you can get much closer. It's a much easier thing to do. Here it is a very hard thing to do, but I'm going to give it a try, and we'll see what we can do. We got to shrink it way down, all the way down. I think that's about as small as I can get it. And then we're going to move it, and in production with, I have a very, very good video camera going right now. So if we had a good gust of wind, which we don't, it's a very still night, you would see, but I will blow it up and put it on TikTok or on Instagram. If we just get a little bit of wind, you would see the Ukrainian flag covering the Russian flag at the top of the flagpole here. And the Russians can see it. But the flag is not extended, and so it's hard. Can you see it, Marichka? Oh, it's coming up now, actually. There's a little bit of wind coming up.
Yeah, just a tiny bit. Yeah.
And if we could, if I have stood out here for hours waiting for the right gust of wind to get the Russian flag to extend so that I could project Putin Khilo on it. And I have a wonderful little video of that with my friend who you know as well, Chema, trying to get a video of it, and her voice is on it. But I don't think it's going to happen tonight because it's the wind is very still. But in the compound, they can see what we're doing. And so we're just going to end. They can put the Z's up, but we will put the flag in between, and we will put the trizub in between. And oh, that's the wrong trizub for this purpose. And now we can bring it back to size. And with that, we're going to close out. Marichka, it's been lovely to meet you properly this morning. And let's do this again soon.
Sure thing. I'll see ya.
All right, Matteo, you can close out the live stream, and it will shut down the YouTube stream on it by itself. And thanks to Matteo for running the stream so that I could focus on the projection and the talking and that sort of thing. And thanks to you all for joining us.